Climate change is reshaping ecosystems in ways that extend far beyond melting glaciers and rising seas, and one of the less publicized consequences involves fundamental changes to mushroom distribution patterns. Species that historically remained confined to particular geographic regions are establishing populations in new areas as temperature and precipitation patterns shift. For mushroom foragers, this creates a newly dangerous landscape where traditional local knowledge, the expertise passed down through generations about which mushrooms grow where, is becoming obsolete and potentially deadly. Documented range expansions of toxic mushroom species are appearing in scientific literature and Poison Control Center reports. Death cap mushrooms, Amanita phalloides, originally native to Europe, have established invasive populations across the western United States, particularly in California where they've associated with introduced oak trees. But more recently, death caps are appearing in regions where they've never been documented before, expanding their range as climate conditions change. European toxic species are similarly establishing in North American locations previously free from those species. And seasonal timing of mushroom fruiting has shifted, with species appearing earlier or later than historical patterns predicted. The mechanisms driving these range expansions combine temperature changes, precipitation pattern alterations, and ecological disruptions that create opportunities for species to colonize new territories. Warming temperatures allow southern species to survive winter conditions that previously limited their northern range. Drought stress and changed rainfall patterns affect competition between species, sometimes favoring toxic mushrooms over edible ones in particular environments. And the symbiotic relationships many mushrooms form with tree roots mean that wherever people plant non-native trees, they potentially introduce the mycorrhizal fungal partners of those trees, including toxic species. Specific documented cases illustrate the deadly consequences when local knowledge fails because species ranges have shifted. Poisoning outbreaks have occurred where experienced local foragers misidentified newly arrived species that resembled historically safe local mushrooms. The foragers applied their traditional knowledge correctly, but that knowledge no longer reflected current biological reality. Ecosystems where invasive toxic species now grow alongside native edible ones create confusion even for expert foragers who must constantly update their understanding of which species they might encounter. The invalidation of traditional local knowledge represents more than just a technical problem. It undermines cultural practices and creates rifts within communities where elder wisdom is respected. When younger generations with updated mycological information contradicts elders' traditional teaching about which mushrooms are safe, it creates social tension. Yet the biological reality is that climate change has fundamentally altered which species grow where, and relying on knowledge developed in stable climatic conditions becomes dangerous when those conditions no longer exist. Updated foraging guidance must acknowledge this new reality explicitly. Traditional local knowledge, while valuable, is no longer sufficient for safe foraging. Current regional mycological surveys that document which species are currently present in an area should inform foraging decisions rather than historical records or passed-down knowledge about what used to grow there. The comforting assumption that it never grew here before no longer applies. Species ranges are actively shifting, and unexpected species are appearing in new locations regularly. Predictive modeling of where deadly mushroom species may spread next could help target prevention education and prepare medical systems in regions likely to see new toxic species establishment. If climate models predict that conditions suitable for death cap mushroom survival are expanding into new regions, those regions can proactively educate residents and healthcare providers about identification and treatment before poisoning outbreaks occur. This proactive approach contrasts with the current reactive pattern where education intensifies only after people start dying from newly arrived species. The intersection of climate change and mushroom poisoning represents an underappreciated public health consequence of global environmental change. While attention focuses on heat waves, hurricanes, and sea level rise, The quiet expansion of deadly mushroom species into new territories creates risks that are harder to visualize but no less real. As ecosystems continue changing in response to altered climate conditions, the safe assumption that local foraging expertise remains valid becomes increasingly dangerous.